All right, team, welcome back. Here we're going to do a basic introduction to Lightroom Classic. So this video is for beginners, amateurs that are just starting out in Lightroom, and hopefully this will assist you to fast track your developing and editing skills in Lightroom. So in today's example, we've got this lovely image of a white eye captured next to the well-known Christmas flower of New Zealand, and we're going to be using this image as an example today. So just to get started, once you open Lightroom Classic, which you need to purchase through Adobe Creative Suite, you go to File and Import Photos and Videos. You select the source and then you select that and then you hit Import. Just to remember, to get full access to all the edits, adjustments, and functionalities of Lightroom Classic, you need to take your image, the image file type in your camera, to RAW. So always use a RAW image, the file type, and make sure your camera is set to that to capture the image in RAW. Right, so let's get going. So the first thing we want to do here is this is the image is captured with a 400mm zoom lens, and that's the closest I could get. Obviously, there's a lot of foliage around the bird, which we need to crop away to get a real focus on the subject of this photograph, which is the white eye looking onto the Christmas flower. So we're going to go to the cropping tool here, and there comes up the grid bar, and then to keep the vertical and horizontal part of the photograph consistent, hold the shift key down and then drag image down and move the image into position, which should be about there, and then go back to the edit function. And there we go, the image is cropped. Now, before I do any exposure making the image darker or lighter, I firstly do a global adjustment, global meaning the entire image. And the first thing I do before I do anything, I increase the vibrance. I'm pushing it up, you see the colors start popping. That's about right. And also the saturation. I'll bring that up a bit. And you start seeing it getting a lot more vibrant. Right, doesn't look too bad, but we still got a lot to do. One thing here, we've got a very distractive background with this foliage. Although it's quite dark, it is quite distractive. We want to really put emphasis on the subject matter here. So we need to separate the subject, the foreground, from the background. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to create a mask using the masking tool for the background. So it's here, we select mask, and we click on background. Now, AI technology in Lightroom Classic is going to do the detection of the background, which is done. You can see it's highlighted in red, and it's not done a bad job. Obviously, it's not always 100% correct, and we need to add or subtract to the mask. As you can see here, it's included some of the foliage here around the bird, which we really don't. We want it to also really stand out a bit, especially the flowers and all that. So we're going to work through by subtracting the masking tool by adding a brush. Now you can make your brush smaller or larger just using the scroll on your mouse. And then on your brush size here, you must always keep it at, I recommend at 100 a feather, and the density, you can go up to around 85. All right, so you're going to subtract. So we want this leaf to be in the picture, in the foreground. So we don't want to include that in the background. We want also this to stand out a bit. Yeah. We just want to make sure this is all captured here. Make the brush a bit smaller. here to also capture a bit of the leaf next to the bird, bit of the foreground here, and a bit of that foliage over there. So you get the hang of that. So the red now is the mask, which we want to separate from the foreground. So what we want to do is to make the subject really pop, we want to darken the background. So we've selected it. Now we're going to go to the exposure button setting and drop the exposure, because you can see the background is getting darker and the foreground subject is starting to really pop. You don't want to go overboard to make it look unnatural, but we're trying to put emphasis on the beautiful subject matter. That should do it there. Now we want to do the opposite and add in another mask for the subject. We want to enhance the subject, so we're adding a new mask, and we select the subject. And AI has selected the bird and a bit of the flower. It's made a bit of, we don't want that background there. We may want to just add on some of the leaves here. So we're going to add, with using the brush tool again, we want to also use some of this. We'll go back there, undo, add the brush. Also need to subtract like this part here. This is really the background. That's also the background over there. I want to add a bit more to this mask. I think we need to just put a little bit more of this foliage here, this foreground foliage. All right, so we've selected now our subject, which we want to edit independently from the background. So let's see. Is the exposure right? We just bumping it up slightly. There we go. We want to push up the temperature just to make it a bit warmer. And you can see the browns, olive green, and reds and yellows stand out a bit more. And the greens. We're going to add some clarity to the subject, as well as a bit of sharpness. So remember, this is only just applying to the subject, not the background, as we're working on this mask at the moment. At the end, just before the end, we're going to denoise the whole image, which takes out those fine little white dots. When I took this photograph, the light wasn't the best, so there was a bit of noise, as we would call it. And Lightroom Classic has that functionality to denoise the image, which we'll get onto shortly. All right, hitting the edit button, we go back to the global basic. Basic is for when you're in the basic mode here, you are actually making adjustments to the entire image. So let's look at the reds. The only reds are really in the flower, so by making this adjustment, we're not going to be really affecting the background. So we're just enhancing the red and the oranges, the yellows on the tips of the flower. And I would say that is basically it. Going back to the background mask, which is mask one, we actually want to, besides making it darker, we want to reduce the clarity, as we don't want to have much attention to the background. So we're reducing the clarity as well as the sharpness. That looks better. Just coming back to the global adjustments in the basic view, on the color settings, there is magenta color. I want to enhance that part of the flower. So let me just Control plus to zoom into your image. Hold down Control and hit the plus button. And let's see. The reds, let's just look if we can push those reds slightly more. No. The yellows. Oh, yeah, that actually looks better that way. The greens, just tone it down a bit. And I think that's it. What we want to do is we're going to denoise the image now. And AI functionality has a denoise function. So we're going to hit the denoise button, and Lightroom Classic is going to do a calc of a preview of what it would look like on an isolated part of the image after the denoise function has been applied. So you can set the amount of denoise by using this slider up here. All right, so that looks good. And we hit enhance and we let the computer do its work. This takes a couple of minutes. So I'm going to quickly grab myself a cup of coffee and I'll be back once the denoising has been completed. Right, Adobe Lightroom Classic has now done the denoising and this is how it looks. So let's just have a quick Control plus to zoom in. You can see the denoising has done a pretty good job at sharpening up the image. I would like a little bit more sharpening around the eye. There's a bit of blur around the eye, and always, as a bird photography, they always judge your photograph on the sharpness of the beak and the eye area. So I would like to see if I can add just a slight more bit of sharpness around the eye. So doing that, you go back to the masking tool, and you're going to create a new mask, and we're just going to brush that in. And the density, we're going to push up to 90 and increase the brush size, and we're just going to sharpen this area. And from there, we're going to go down to the clarity, and we're just going to push this clarity up and just sharpen up the eye a bit, as you can see there. And we're going to add some more sharpness as well to that, and it looks a bit better. I wouldn't push it too much, then it will start actually looking unnatural in relation to the rest of the image. All right, let's zoom out, Control minus. The last thing we want to do is vignetting. We're going to go down to effects, just hit the edit tool, and it's right down near the end here, vignetting, and we just want to darken the edges. because there's still a bit of distraction with the highlights of the leaves on the outer edges. So what we're going to do is just turn this down, and you're going to see it's going to just darken the edges slightly and just give a central focus to the subject. And that is it. Pretty happy with the image. I could crop it a bit more, but for this purpose of this exercise, you get the idea, and you have a play around. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. If you enjoyed this video, I'll do my best to give you the best answer I can. And yeah, see you in the next exercise. Just lastly, if you want to export and save your image, you go to File again, and then you hit the Export, and you will select your location where you want to save your folder. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.